find out what our history is, where we're from. I've been told all my life that I have rich heritage here in this land. Come to find out that my heritage is a whole lot more closer than I thought. Today, we are just gonna take a walk through history and see how my family and my ancestors lived. And I want my keikis and my cousins and my family to know who we are and where we're from, because it's so proud, so rich, the history.
Back of me is the banyan tree, and the banyan tree has a particular familiarity with myself and the Burgess family. But first, a wider explanation of the location. In back of me is Ali Drive, and we are in the town of Kailua Kona. And the reason we are here is to somehow preserve or record history of this particular place. The tree itself had been standing here at the time of my father's birth. It is known that when he was born, there was a house behind the banyan tree in which he was born. So we normally say that he was born under the banyan tree here in Kailua Kona. The property that he was born on had been in the Burgess family and still remains within the larger Ohana, or within the Burgess family, the Kona Banyan Court and the property associated with it. So this particular area has been in the Burgess line, coming out of the Lainui lands, I believe. My great-great-great-great-grandmother, I believe that's how many generations back, whose name was Poka Lainui, had once owned this property and over a period of generations passed it down, which continues to the Burgess line. Very unfortunately not in my line at that point. But it went through the Rodney Burgess line, and they have done quite a bit of improvement and have retained that property for many years. So that's what you see in back of me, with a tree and spaces behind the tree. So that's a brief story of the tree itself. Nothing seems to have remained the same, other than the fact that the tree still remains. The buildings around it has all changed, and the house that he was born in no longer stands there. So I'm going to talk about Poka and who she was. She came to Kailua as a young lady walking from Kohala, which is another section of the island, coming across to Kailua town. And she came across because she wanted to participate in a wedding of her sister that occurred here in Kailua. She didn't leave, she stayed in Kailua. She then met an Alexander Burgess, and this is a connection between Burgess and Poka. She had a child whose name was Alexander, and her husband then passed away. She subsequently married another person whose name was Lainui. Now in that time, which was about the middle 1800s, the Hawaiians normally carried only one name until the law changed. So while she was married to Lainui, she then took Lainui as a last name. So she has been known both as Poka and as Poka Lainui. She was a very intelligent woman. She could read, she could write, and she could accumulate lands in this area. And over a period of time, she accumulated Lainui's land. She purchased Lainui's land and then became a landowner here in this area. She lived for a long period of time. She raised my father, who was born in 1907, and continued to raise him until she passed in about 1916, I would expect. And so the family continued to reside here, with my father being raised by her, and after she passed, then the Burgess family, or that branch of the Burgess family, it's called the Alexander Burgess line, then moved to Honolulu. And the line has continued then on Oahu. There's other Burgess lines. There's a Rodney Burgess line, there's a Harry Burgess line, there's a Jimmy Burgess line. So there are many different strands out of the Poka marrying Burgess, then marrying Lainui, and the Burgess line has continued. At some other time we can continue with the greater definition of who married into what families, the Auld families, the Fern families, and all of those things. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at the church that she had attended. She was initially buried at the church. The church then developed a parking lot, so her grave was moved along with others. I don't know where she has finally rested, but we can inquire with the church and get some information there.
Aloha, I am sitting inside of the Mokuaikaua Church. I'm not familiar with the appropriate pronunciation of the name, and so I want to be very careful and not misrepresent the name or the meaning within the name. It was a church first established by the missionaries. The congregation itself was established in 1820. The church was eventually built in 36. So the structure was built at that time, but the congregation was one of the first congregations formed in Hawaii, and it was here in Kailua where permission was given to the missionaries by the leadership in Hawaii to go ahead and establish their congregations. So the church is very historic, and many people associated within this Kailua Kona area associated with this church. It appears that Poka was also associated with the church, and the oral record that we have is that she was buried on the grounds of this particular church. However, because the church eventually developed a parking lot, the grave that she was in was removed and placed somewhere else. I had hoped to meet with someone who knew where the records were so that we could identify where the grave site is that she was moved to, and we have no record of that.
You know, by coincidence or by some kind of destiny, this morning I came across a friend I had not met before, Michael Perry. He had been a youth pastor at Mokuaikaua Church. And I asked him about what had happened to the graves where Poka had been buried. Without any hesitation, he said, I know where the second cemetery, or the Mokuaikaua cemetery is at, and I can show it to you. So without going further into the story, I think this would be the appropriate time to introduce our youth pastor who had participated in part of the preservation and removal of the bones.
Yes.
Pastor Perry,
yes.
Aloha and welcome. Thank you very much for all the information you have given us.
So my uncle was talking about how in the 1800s, I believe, they was building construction for building a parking lot where Mokuaikaua Church stands now on a drive, and they move the bones and stuff like that up to, which I believe, from my knowledge, in this area here, that's where their final place is right now.
Continuing on with this crazy day, we are taking a panoramic view of the cemetery. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done in finding the specific site, unless we can locate it through some kind of records. Here you see some of the headstones, and the date seems to be relatively recent, 1987, 1978, and now we come to one headstone, which is almost impossible to read. And here's another one that is really, in fact, a headstone reading Ohana. Another stone back here, and it's impossible to read as well. So it will present quite a task for anyone to come through without a map to try to find the grave of Puka Lainui. Here we are on the property that oftentimes is referred to as the Kona property. We have just come across the gate, and that gate marks the entrance to the property. And if you look right in back of me, in this area back here, sometimes you hear about the grave site of some of our elders being buried there. Yeah, so that is the general location, and perhaps later on we can actually take a look at the stone structure. The burials occurred after the change in religion, Christianity having come in Kailua town. So the movement, the change in religion, the movement, and movement towards the Christian faith. However, they were not buried, or it doesn't appear that they were at a church ground, such as Puka, where she was buried originally at the church. So this is the property. That line along that stone wall demarcates the property line that goes further down, and it starts further up and it goes further down. And you can see it on a map. That has an interesting history because back in 1970, about 1970, 71, 72, there was a huge storm that occurred, and the water, as water will naturally do, follows the roadway, or follows the most direct line or the most direct way because of the gravitational pull. So they decided that they would cut the property line or cut the channel into the Burgess property and bring it on this side of the wall and then bring the channel down. So my dear wife, Pua, there was a house there that is now broken down, and so she slept there by herself in the dark of night. And she says she remembers the cows sticking their head
Into the hut.
into the hut, because the house is all broken down, yeah. And so the cows were wondering who's invading their property. And then she started dragging all her signs up to the fence line, getting ready for the bulldozer to come in and protesting you ain't coming across. Yeah. At that time, Uncle Lincoln, Uncle David, Uncle Junior had then arrived, and then I arrived after that. And then we sort of stood in front of the workers from coming in. And also we had the support of some of the family members who were associated here. And there was Mrs. Freitas, who also joined us, and other family members joined us. And so we had a good time getting to know the folks up in this area. Okay? What happened was that she was good friends with Lynn Waters of Channel 4 News. And so Lynn came down and the cameraman came down, and so we reported that what has happened is now that as Kona develops and people come in and invest, what they are doing is they are picking on the Hawaiian families who had maintained the property
sort of in line with what the purpose of this property was, for agricultural or ranch use, and we have always maintained it that way, of course leased to the Freitas family and that line of people. So we made a big issue. It played very large in the media, and but they said there's nothing you can do. The city council has already passed a resolution, and once a resolution is passed, they have the right to come in and claim eminent domain and claim the property. And we said, no, you ain't coming in no matter what you do. They said that there's no reason why we can stop them. We said we have graves on this land. And they said, well, we have done all our surveys, we find no graves on the land. So we said that may be what you find, but according to our history, we have graves on the land. But besides that, go pick on the other property, yeah? So we had a big fight. We went into court, we filed an action to stop them from coming in. Then we went before the city council, and people in the city council says, no, it never happens. We never change our decision. But in this particular case, city council reversed the decision, and so they redrew the channel, and that's why you find as you come across here and as you come across that bridge was created to accommodate the entrance into this area, because they did build a channel right outside. And if you look with the map, or you can look at the land now, you will see that the channel comes down on the outside of this Burgess property. So there was a house here that she stayed in, and that house is now broken down, and there's a house further up that was used for by family who lived there, and they were raising coffee. And very interesting, if we have the opportunity to go up there, you'll see a roof that slides. And can you imagine a roof?
That's for the
to dry the coffee.
That's for dry the coffee.
Yeah. But that may be sort of a rundown now. I don't know exactly what the condition is. There's a lot of catchment tanks here. So that's the main source of water for this area. Okay, so first what you have surrounding in this area is predominantly coffee plants. They're sort of young, not ready for the coffee beans to be picked. But this is, when you talk about Kona coffee, this is part of it. This is an example of coffee. Now, surrounded in this area, it surrounds a stone structure. Now, obviously, it's not a natural structure. It was placed here by human hands. And this is where we understand our elders had been buried. I don't know the name of all of them. I believe Charlotte Auld is in this grave, and I had known some of the other names. But anyway, this is the site. When you hear about we have a burial on the ground, it's in here that the burial exists. Charlotte Auld was married into the Burgess line of Alexander Burgess in the earlier period of time. So it was one or the first or the second son from Poka, generationally, the first or the second. I believe it was the first generation. So Alexander Burgess, the child, married Auld, Charlotte Auld, who comes from the Adams and the Auld family. And you recall seeing some of the name, the Adams name, the sea captain, who was Kamehameha's howler captain. He developed the Hawaiian flag. So that's the Auld line, the Adams line. And if you follow that Auld line, you will find a lot of kahuna in that line. And that is where you connect up to Kamehameha's direct line through the first wife of Kamehameha. But I won't get into that story. That's a second, different story from the purpose for this program.
Okay, so this is this right here. If you look around, all the way around, there's the lava block wall around here, and there's a small little holding pen. This is for branding. The Panayolos the rope right through here with the horse, and the horse pulls the cow up, the head up, all the way up, boom. And once the head come in here, Tommy said he grabbed the leg, and then they brand the cows. So this is the style that the Paniolas used to use right here. So this roof used to have wheels on them, and the coffee beans sit on top of this roof, and then at night they slide the roof closed so that they protect the bean, and then during the day they slide them back open. The roof of this house get wheels on them so they can slide them back and forth. The coffee bean comes down the chute here. You open the door, you put your burlap bag here, the coffee bean fall into the burlap bag, you seal them up, close the door back up.
How many did you put?
Oh, there should be one for each
right now.
stud. One for each stud.
These roofs for the horse sheet down could be moved back and forth all day, and they close it at night to protect the coffee, and these are what they roll on. And these up on the top of the roof, on one of those braces, they have a 1-inch pipe that this would actually roll and carry the weight of the roof back and forth. Good, Mom. You're getting used to it.
So before had Japanese people living here. So you come out this window, and the Japanese that were living here, cultivating, farming here, they made a sudo right here. Furo. And furo is a shower in Japanese.
So Japanese bath style is like steam room. So, you know, all the water in there, the steam, and usually there's a seat in there. You sit and then you bathe yourself. And you have like a bucket of water, or you have like a steam room.
Interesting.
So this is the property line. It shoots this corner, it shoots to that mango tree, and then it shoots straight up. He said before time this was a pathway between that wall and this wall right here. And he said they used to use the pathway, it made it easier to get around. He said, but before they have natural paths like this throughout this property. And he says he lets the cows in and they clear it, and you can see them, the actual pathway, you know what I mean? But then right now they all grown back because the cows are all down.
I'm Richard Bates. Yeah. So I approached Kaliko in September of 2016 about the old Cebu restaurant. Opened March of 2017, and I'll tell you what, it's been a struggle. Well, the volcano eruption, tourism went nothing, and it's okay. We're just making it through, you know. And blessings, faith and trust, little patience with the Burgess family, and yeah. See, that was I came in '72 with my family on vacation, and I stayed, but I don't remember because the bar, the Red Pants, had already burned down. In 1970. You know the story? Well, the actor Richard Boone from a TV series called Have Gun Will Travel in the 50s, he used to come to Kona for fishing all the time. He stayed at the Watt home, just the other side of Fish Hopper, Old Ocean View.
The Gulf.
And but in '68 he came professionally for CBS to film a pilot movie called Kona Coast. You could Google that and watch it on YouTube. They built the bar right here on the lot called Akamai Barns for the pilot movie. And I'm assuming that that's the footprint of the cement that still is there. Because that's always been here, the cement. This cement here, that people sitting on, that's always been there. What I did when Kaliko gave me permission to use it is I capped the cement to make it smooth for chairs. But it was already there. So, but what happened is they were competing for a series against Hawaii 5-0. we know who got the series. Then I understand the actor Boone took the bar Akamai Barnes over privately, but he had to rename it because CBS owned the name Akamai Barnes Post. And so he had to rename his bar. He called his bar the Red Pants. Then in 1970 there was a murder in the Red Pants. I understand from a person who was in the bar the night of the murder that the murderer came in, put a pistol to the victim's head, shot him, and walked out, was chased down, beat up, and went to jail. But the bullet exited the victim's head and hit this woman, Sherry Cull, in the side. She came up to me one day, like your family did, and said, "I'm so happy to see something going on with this property." And she told me the whole story, that she was in the bar the night of the murder. So, but from what I understand, the Burgess family chose, I don't know who was the matriarch of the family at that time, but anyway, she chose to let this property sit empty for the last 47 years because of the stigma of the murder. Now I understand she has passed, and Kaliko and Nani and maybe other Burgess family members control the family properties. And because they used to own the parking lot in the back, and the county took it from them by eminent domain, forced them to sell it because they were not using it. So they turned it into a parking lot. It's in the best interest of the community, so they can force a private owner to sell. So now Nani and Kaliko are concerned the county would try to take this for non-use. I know the family doesn't want to sell it, but they don't want to lose it either. So that's where I came in. And another grace of God, you know, win-win situation. And I'm trying to turn it into even more, where we're going to try to open up for dinners also. We have the full bar liquor license. We just never use it because we don't have the team. You know, having trouble with employees, you know. It's really hard to find people that want to stay and want to be a part of a family team, you know. So, but we just keep moving. So far it's been one step forward and, two step forward and one step back. I want it to be where it's 2 step forward and 2 more step forward and 2 more step forward.
So listen to the words of Paia Kamehameha,
Okay,
who said, "Mai nana I hope, nana I mua. Don't look back, move forward."
yes.
That's
Don't
exactly
move
what
back,
you
move
said.
forward.
As I'm standing here, I'm looking across into the ocean. And as I look across, I see the Kamehameha Hotel, where King Kamehameha had his residence. And I'm also looking within that scope of vision, a place called Ahu'ena, the death spot of Paia Kamehameha, who died, I believe it was on the 8th of May in 1819, I believe it was. But Ahu'ena is very significant in Hawaiian history because it marks a passing of time and the kinds of stuff that Kamehameha had left back to us. There's a very popular song, it still remains popular today, and it's a song called Nali'i. And it talks about the great love of the chiefs that the Hawaiian people had. And so as Paia Kamehameha was on his deathbed, there was a chief who came up to him, one of his favorite chiefs, and he held Kamehameha and he said, "Oh my king, are there any words that you leave back to us before you pass?" And what Paia Kamehameha said was, "E na'i valino o kou, I ku'upono." And then some would say, "I ku'upono a ole pau." Other people who record it say, when they say a ole pau, he didn't finish that sentence and then he died. E na'i valino o kou is be undeterred. I ku'upono is the pono, the justice, the appropriateness for Hawaii. And then either is not finished or he didn't finish the rest of the sentence. So many people look at those words as the heartbeat of what Hawaii is. That last word, pono, ku'upono, my justice, my righteousness of Hawaii. So be undeterred, continue to seek after the righteousness of Hawaii. And so I advocate that that is the first constitution for the nation of Hawaii. It's not when it was redrafted or written in 1843 or 1839 or any of the years of this constitution, but the very constitution of Hawaii, the very makeup, the character of Hawaii is contained in those words. My father's name was Ned Edward Burgess, and he was one of a number of children that come from the Alexander Burgess line of children. And his siblings included Alexander, who was an older brother. It included William Burgess, who was actually born on the island of Oahu after the family had moved from Kona to Honolulu. He had sisters, and I'm afraid I might not remember all of the names, but one I believe was Louise, and another was, and I've forgotten the other names. So there were a number of brothers and sisters, and eventually they all moved to Honolulu after Poka had passed away. Aloha, I'm standing in front of Hulihe'e Palace, and there's this writing explaining the palace. I was just reading it, and it has special significance to some of the words which may not often be carried or found importance in other readers. It says here that Hulihe'e Palace was built in 1838 by Governor John Adams Kuakini, a companion of Kamehameha I and one of the first chiefs to take up Western ways. The name John Adams Kuakini is significant for our purpose today as we try to trace the family relationships. The Adams family, it's not, to me, it's not by accident that his middle name is Adams. Captain Adams was one of the Haole captains of Paea Kamehameha and took the responsibility to captain his ship as he traded with foreign countries. And there's some question about how the Hawaiian flag was created, and the story that comes down through our family is that Captain Adams had developed the flag in order to avert being attacked by pirates at that time by combining the British Union Jack as well as the stripes to stand for or to indicate the American relationship, although the stripes were also to indicate the islands of Hawaii. When he returned, he explained to Paea Kamehameha the reason why he adopted that particular flag, and so Kamehameha then adopted it as the national flag. So contrary to other explanations of how the flag was developed and that it was imposed by the British and the rest, no, it was a Hawaiian concept developed by a Hawaiian or by a Haole who represented Kamehameha, and Kamehameha adopted it. But the Adams family is also that the captain married into the Kamehameha line and married one of the daughters of Kamehameha's first wife, which is a line that we come from. So from Adams' child was married into the Auld line. So Auld married an Adams, and the Burgess eventually came into the line to Charlotte Auld, who married a Burgess. So all of these ties up to that history of Hawaii. Kailua Kona, as a small town, was the center of politics for a long period of time in Hawaii. And it was within this area, or within a Kona area, that when Cook arrived, he arrived in Kealakekua Bay, in a bay close to this particular area. And so the center, the heartbeat of politics for this portion of Hawaii Island was located in this area. And what happened was that it was from this area that the powers begin to strengthen. The military force began to strengthen and eventually took over the Hilo section, then Hawaii Island, then started taking over the rest of the islands. there's many different stories that add to the importance of this area. The birth of Kamehameha, the prophecy that he would eventually be born and unite the islands and all of those things, which is far more extensive than I can provide, in this short period of time. But the significance of this area, this being the first capital of the nation of Hawaii, this is a spot in which Paia Kamehameha died. He was birthed on this island. Some people would say no, he wasn't birthed on Hawaii Island because the mother had to take him out to sea to birth him because of the prophecy that he would be born. And the king of this area at that time also understood the prophecy. It was well known that he would be born. So he sent out parties to look for every child born at about this period of time to kill the child. And so they had to, as he arrived back on shore, then they had to hide him or secrete him into a valley in that other section, in the Hawi section, in a valley known as Avini Valley. His very name, Kamehameha, the lonely one, was because he was raised as a lonely child. So he didn't have playmates, but he was taught various skills as a future leader, especially many of the fighting skills. So he was raised as a warrior king. Again, another history, we can go into it at some other time.